Here is our project on the digestive system by Avia and Lucia. Starting with the first organ in the digestive system, and the one that commences digestion, the mouth. There are three main functions of the mouth, which are to receive food, to mechanically digest food, and chemically digest starch. Because the mouth is the starting point for digestion, it begins the digestion of all different food molecules. The mouth produces the enzyme salivary amylase. Saliva is made out of water, mucus, and including the enzyme salivary amylase. Once the food is in the beginning stage of digestion, chewing, it is now called a bolus.
The esophagus. The main function for the esophagus is to transport foods from the mouth to the stomach. It is a very simple function but can also at the same time have many disorders. At the top of the esophagus is a band of muscle called the upper esophageal sphincter. Another band of muscle, the lower esophageal sphincter, is at the bottom of the tube, which is slightly above the stomach. When a person swallows, these sphincters relax so food can pass into the stomach. When not in use, they contract so the food and stomach acid do not flow back up the esophagus. The esophagus does not break down food, it transports food to the stomach. The esophageal tube contracts as it moves food to the stomach. This is called peristalsis. There are no enzymes that break down food in the esophagus, but the esophagus is lined with mucous membrane for the lubrication of the food, which is called bolus. Peristalsis then pushes a bolus down your esophagus into your stomach. There is no digestion that occurs in the esophagus, but it is sort of mechanical because the esophagus pushes food down through the esophageal tube.
The next organ in our system is called the stomach. The functions of the stomach are to temporarily store food, mechanical digestion of churning and mixing food, and chemical digestion of protein, which is digested by gastric juices and that is secreted from the gastric glands. The mix of pepsinogen and hydrochloric acid, which is in the gastric juices, transform the protein molecules into peptides. The types of food molecules that the stomach digests are proteins. The enzymes the stomach produces are pepsinogen and gastric juice.
The liver. The main functions of the liver are the production of bile, cholesterol, urea, and plasma proteins. It also eliminates cholesterol and old red blood cells, detoxifies your blood, and converts the nutrients in our diets into substances that the body can use, like converting glucose to glycogen, carbohydrates to fats, and amino acids to carbohydrates and fats. It is also a storage place for these substances and supplies cells with these nutrients when needed. The food molecules that the liver breaks down are fats. It converts excess carbohydrates and protein into forms which are stored for later use. It also synthesizes cholesterol. The enzymes that are produced to break down and absorb fats is bile. Hepatocytes produce bile in the liver, which then passes through the bile ducts to be stored in the gallbladder for later use. The liver is chemical digestion. Liver is chemical because it produces bile and other chemicals the body needs to function. The liver also detoxifies potentially harmful chemicals. It breaks down and secretes a lot of drugs that can be toxic to the body. The pancreas. The main functions of the pancreas are the production of pancreatic juices, which are called enzymes, the production of hormones as chemical messengers, and the production of correct chemicals in proper quantities at the proper times to digest the foods we eat. The pancreas has an exocrine function that helps in digestion and an endocrine function that helps regulate blood sugar. The food molecules that the pancreas breaks down are sugars, fats, and starches. The enzymes that are produced to break down sugars, fats, and starches are pancreatic juices. There are three types of pancreatic enzymes called trypsin, which is used to digest proteins, amylase for the digestion of carbohydrates, and lipase to break down fats. The pancreas is chemical digestion because it secretes digestive enzymes that chemically break down food molecules. The gallbladder. The main functions of the gallbladder is to store bile. The gallbladder doesn't necessarily break down food, it helps your body break down and absorb fats from food. The enzymes that are produced to break down food is bile, except the gallbladder only stores bile and releases bile when it's needed. Since the gallbladder does not digest anything, it doesn't have a mechanical or chemical digestion, but it is technically chemical digestion because it aids in the chemical breakdown process of fats.
The small intestines are divided into three parts: the duodenum, where the chemical digestion takes place, and the duodenum and the ileum, which are the absorption areas. The duodenum receives bile and pancreatic juice to begin chemical digestion of protein, carbohydrate, and lipids. The walls of the duodenum and the small intestine have ridges that secrete three different enzymes. Peptides digest amino acids and protein, maltase, which digests glucose and other carbohydrates, and lipase, which digests lipids. For absorption, the walls of the small intestine is lined with convoluted walls to increase the surface area. The surface area is covered in villus. Each villi contain blood vessels and lymph vessels that connect to the bloodstream and the lymph system to absorb. The last organ in our digestive system is the large intestine. The functions of the large intestine are to store fecal matter until elimination, reabsorption of H2O from food unable to be digested, and the absorption of certain vitamins. The bacteria and feces are important because they break down the indigestible food and produce vitamin K, amino acid, and more growth hormone, which are absorbed into the colon. Unlike other organs in the digestive system, the large intestine produces hormones instead of enzymes, which are gastrin, serin, CCK, and GIP. The large intestine uses mechanical digestion to eliminate feces. The protein molecule supports elastin, collagen and cartilage in bone, muscle cells, creatine in hair and nails. The metabolic functions of the protein molecule is to create enzymes to speed up the biochemical reactions. It creates antibodies to protect the immune system from diseases, to transport oxygen to the blood while using hemoglobin, and the creation of different hormones, like insulin. Protein molecules commence the digestion in the mouth with the mechanical digestion due to chewing. Then the bolus of protein is transported through the esophagus using contractions to push the bolus to the stomach. Once it reaches the stomach, that's where most of the chemical digestion happens. The protein is mixed and churned in the stomach. The lining of the stomach secretes gastric juice, which contains pepsiogen, turning the protein into pepsin. Then it is transported through the stomach to the small intestine, where the final step of chemical digestion takes place, and the absorption. The small intestine secretes pepsiogen to finish the chemical digestion, and the molecule is absorbed into the lining of the small intestine.
Monosaccharides are sugars that cannot be broken up to give a simpler sugar. Three main monosaccharides are glucose, galactose, and fructose. These sugars are absorbed into the bloodstream and delivered to the liver. The mode of transport also differs between these three sugars. Glucose and fructose are absorbed pretty quickly, but this also depends on what is being eaten with the sugars at the time. For example, a meal containing protein and fat causes the sugars to be absorbed more slowly than when consumed on their own. As galactose is not found as a monosaccharide in nature, absorbed galactose primarily comes from the breakdown of lactose. Once galactose and fructose are in the liver, they will be removed from the blood and will be converted into other metabolites. Only a small amount of fructose reaches the bloodstream, so blood fructose concentrations are generally always low. Galactose is primarily converted into glucose and stored as glycogen.
Lipids, or saturated fatty acids, are insoluble in water. This molecule creates long-term energy storage, it creates insulation, it protects vital organs with padding, and they are chemical messengers to secrete important hormones like estrogen and testosterone. The beginning of the digestion begins in the mouth, with the mechanical digestion with chewing. Then the bolus is transported through the esophagus to the stomach using contractions to push the bolus to the stomach. The bolus is mixed and churned with gastric juices and passed into the small intestine. The small intestine is the main location for the digestion of lipids. The enzyme lipase is secreted by the liver and pancreas, breaks down the lipids, and then absorbed into the walls of the small intestine.
The two main types of nucleic acids are DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA, which is ribonucleic acid. DNA and RNA are polymers and are digested in the small intestine with the help of both pancreatic enzymes and enzymes produced by the small intestine itself. Pancreatic enzymes called ribonuclease and deoxyribonuclease break down RNA and DNA into smaller nucleic acids.